This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 1198 of Horse Tip Daily, your almost everyday morsel of helpful hints, useful facts, and practical techniques for horse folks. Brought to you today by Uncle Jimmy's. Greetings, horse people. Coach Jen here, and thanks for tuning in to Horse Tip Daily. Today's tip is an excerpt from the Horses in the Morning Horse Health Report. The Hit'em crew is joined by Dr. Brian Waldridge for a little chat about wound care. And we'll get right to our tip after this message from Uncle Jimmy's.
Hello, folks. Uncle Jimmy here, and welcome to the world of Uncle Jimmy brand products, where funny names mean serious products. Featuring Uncle Jimmy's Squeezy Buns, the squeezably soft hand treat that your horse will love. The award-winning Uncle Jimmy's Hangin' Balls. Uncle Jimmy's Sugar-Free Ball. The incredible Licky Thing, also in sugar-free. The amazing Uncle Jimmy's Pecker-Wrecker. And the Big Licky. The infamous Uncle Jimmy Hangin' Ball was first designed by me for my own horses to help reduce the bad habits which come from stall boredom. It now can be found around the world. This nutritious, flavored, filled boredom buster will help keep your horses occupied and happy around the clock. Properly hung, it will last for weeks, provided you don't let your horse pin it, and Uncle Jimmy knows who you are. The ball comes in 4 flavors: apple, carrot, peppermint, molasses, and now sugar-free. Once again, welcome to the world of Uncle Jimmy's brand products, where funny names mean serious products, and satisfaction is 100% guaranteed.
And we have Dr. Brian Waldridge on the phone from Lexington, Kentucky. And you can follow him on his Dr. B's Bluegrass Facebook page. And he has many adventures traveling around Lexington, taking care of all horses, famous and backyard horses. And so we welcome him to the show. Dr. Waldridge, good morning.
Oh, good morning. Thanks for having me back.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't wait to have you back on.
Wait a minute, cut right there. You're talking about wounds. Dr. Waldridge, no offense, but I'll be back in about 20 minutes. Just let me know when you're done. Somebody can text me. I'm not so good at this stuff, so I'm just saying.
Well, you know what? The grosser and gorier you can make it, I love it. So bring it on. We're going to talk about wounds today. First of all, let's just catch up. How have you been?
Oh, been good. Been pretty busy. The weather here has been good for late fall in Kentucky, which has been really nice. So I've been getting to go to the track quite a bit and see a lot of horses, and that's been fun. Been a lot of news out of old friends, a lot of new horses that are pretty exciting. You know, horses heard about, seen on TV that are out there now, like Alphabet Soup's there. Touch Gold arrived yesterday, and War Emblem's back from Japan. So it's been really fun to get to know those horses, those famous horses, and still get to see my friends and out in the field, and get to see my old mare every now and then.
Now, talk to us a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about wound care today. Why don't you get us started?
I think the biggest thing on wound care probably starts with, does it need stitches or not, if you look at a wound? And usually if I'm on the phone with somebody who calls about a horse's cut, is, well, if you think it needs stitches, it probably does. You know, one nice thing now is with everybody having phones is you can get a picture of a wound, and that's really helped, because I've been hours away from a client, and they'll send me a picture, and I look at it and say, oh, okay, well, that one's all right. Let's do something different. But I think that's kind of the first decision, you know, when you look at a wound, and then how to keep that wound healthy, I think, is a big thing. And you know, you really can't go wrong with a bandage unless you put it on too tight, which most people don't do. And then trying to keep that wound happy and healthy with some type of antibiotic ointment. And really just, you can usually get it from your vet in a pound jar, a triple antibiotic ointment, or a Neosporin type ointment you just buy at the drugstore. Is really a nice ointment for that wound, because you have to keep it moist, keep those cells happy, because the way that wound heals, you know, it fills in, and it gets granulation tissue, which is just fibroblasts, which are cells that help to contract the wound. So their job is to pull that wound closed, and then the little skin cells on the top, they have to literally crawl across the top of that wound. And And that's how the wound heals. It contracts and then epithelializes. It covers itself back over. And the wound's going to do best in a moist environment because those cells are happier and they can move easier. And also an antibiotic helps to keep down the infection. So I think, the two old principles, bandage it, keep it clean.
So now when you say bandage, I just remember my mom always saying, don't you bandage that. Don't put a Band-Aid on it because it needs air.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. What I have often done, especially if it's a wound that may be a little further up on the leg where you don't have to worry about it getting dirt or manure into it, I think it's okay to leave that bandage off for a couple hours. Just if nothing else, it kind of lets the circulation come back maybe a little better to that area that's been hurt. But I like to put a bandage at least the first couple of days, because another thing I think is really important is it's easier to prevent swelling, especially if it's a leg, than it is to get rid of it. If the horse gets hurt, it may not be swollen yet, then you have a swollen leg the next day. It's harder for that bandage to squeeze that edema back out of the leg.
Okay, that was somebody write that down. It's easier to prevent swelling than to get rid of it. Okay, see, that's very important what you just said. So that needs to be on a t-shirt. Okay, so when you see, that's the kind of stuff you need to put on your show. That was genius. I've never heard that before. So when we are looking at our horse, it comes in from the pasture and it has a wound. What are some of the first things that we need to look at to assess it, to know whether we need to call the vet?
Yeah, I think making sure it's clean, because oftentimes it's on a leg, it may have some dirt, and it's really hard to cause any problems to just take a hose or some water. Another thing you can do is just keep on hand or ask your vet for a bigger syringe, like a 30 cc or a 60 cc syringe. And if you put a 20 gauge needle on there, which they'll have, and they can give you two, and just squeeze water through that syringe, that'll have pretty good pressure, and that'll help to even wash off bacteria with the pressure to clean up that wound. So you want to clean it up first, because sometimes they look really bad, and then you clean them up to see, well, get the blood and the dirt off and see the wound isn't that terrible. So getting them clean, I think, is the first step. Then trying to decide what structures are affected. Is it just literally just a skin wound, but not like a Monty Python skin wound, when their legs cut off. So you want to make sure that
one of the best movies ever made. I'm just going to throw that in there.
It's only a flesh wound, like no arms. Sorry.
Yeah, that was some vet humor. We've used that one before.
I bet. Is that required watching at vet school, that movie? Because it should be.
Well, I used to teach, I taught at Auburn, and I decided once you had gotten a generation past the students, which is where I was when I left, they didn't understand any references to movies or to music or anything. So you had to use it in your own. It's this generational joke, which I still think is funny, but you'd say it to the students and you'd say, it's only a flesh wound, and they would just look at you funny. And you just had to walk away.
Well, we get it. We understand exactly what you're talking about.
I'm dealing with the same thing. I have a bunch of 13-year-old girls that I teach riding lessons to, and they all board their horse here, and I'll say things, and they're like, they look at me sideways. I'm like, oh my God, are you serious? Like, that movie's like a couple years old. That's it. Oh, I know the feeling. Okay, so back to the wound. We are cleaning it out to see if it's a flesh wound.
Yes.
So
I think that's a big thing. So garden hose is fine, or keep those syringes on hand, and that really helps quite a bit to clean those wounds out.
So then we've got this wound, it's clean. How do we assess whether we are going to need just to bandage it ourselves or leave it open? Or is there some thing that you do to kind of, okay, is it this deep? Does it involve this? What do you do next?
Yeah, I think then you got to see where it is on the animal's body. If it's below the knee and below the hock, then it's hopefully just going to be skin. But back there, we have to worry about tendons and joints being open. So if it's in a close proximity to the tendons in the back of the leg, or definitely if it's over joint, then that's more worrisome. So it's probably, if they're there, more in your best interest to call the vet out to take a look, because if you get a joint infection, those can be catastrophic, and they won't show up until a few days later. The horse won't become lame usually until that joint sealed itself back up, and then increased pressure.
Before we let you go, let's wrap up this whole wound care thing. So we get it cleaned off and we decide where it is. We can take a picture of it now and we can send it to our vet. If you can't, you need a younger vet because they need to be with the technology to see these things. Anything else in closing that you would like us to know?
Well, proud flash is the next thing. Once we've got everything under control, do we need to prevent, there is in an area that's more likely to get proud flash. And so generally, if it's below the knee or below the hock, where there's really only skin in that area, those are the wounds that are most likely to get proud flash. So once that wound kind of begins to heal, we have to watch for proud flash, which is what we call it as exuberant granulation tissue. That means the blood vessels and the fibroblasts grow higher than the wound, than the skin margin. And once that happens, the little cells that crawl across the top, those skin cells, they can't crawl over that. Think of it like a mountain. They can't crawl over the mountain. And so that either needs to be trimmed back, or we can use steroids in our wound ointments. And steroids help to inhibit that. And bandages do to some degree too. So if it's below the knee or below the hock, you need to watch for proud flash, because it's easier also to head that off than it is to go back and trim that back and then sort of start over, although we'll have a good bed for that wound to heal, but watch for proud flash in those lower leg wounds.
Now, this whole thing with my thoroughbred that got this cut below the knee, one of the things I was concerned about was the proud flesh. And my vet told me a couple different kind of normal household items to use to prevent it. So what do you recommend for proud flesh?
I usually just take Furosin ointment. I'll put in some dexamethasone, which is a steroid, and I'll put in some old wound stuff called scarlet oil, the red stuff that people have probably seen. And that'll help. The steroids will help to knock back the proud flash, and the scarlet oil helps the epithelialization. So you can use meat tenderizer. I think that works better when it's pretty small amounts of the proud flash, because it has trypsin and things like that actually our bodies produce to help digest protein. So that's how that works. That's probably the only other one I've ever used household remedy-wise, or you can just trim it off the scalpel blade and then start over with a wound ointment. We
appreciate you coming on and giving your expertise, and we hope to talk to you again real soon.
Well, there you have it. You can find links to today's guests as well as lots more tips at horsetipdaily.com. This podcast has been made possible through the generous support of Uncle Jimmy's and listeners like you. Learn how you can help support Horse Radio Network programming and qualify for auditors-only perks at horsetipdaily.com. Click on the Become an Auditor banner in the center of the page. This is Coach Jen, and I'll be back again soon with another tip. So until then, go ride your horse. The Horse Radio Network and the Horse Radio Network hosts are not responsible for statements of guests or their opinions. Use your own judgment when listening to the tips provided by the experts on Horse Tip Daily.